My name is Simone, yes, like the singer, but with sharper cheekbones and better boundaries. I'm 72. I wear red lipstick to the farmer's market, and I grow roses that make grown men in pinstripes lean in and inhale like they're remembering their first love. My late husband called me the Rose Queen. These days, I call myself something simpler. Done. Let me tell you the day that word grew thorns. It was my grandson Leo's 20th birthday, my heart, my fishing buddy, my former co-conspirator in sneaking extra frosting off birthday cakes. I had written him a check for $10,000 because you only turn 20 once and because I've always believed in giving flowers while people can still smell them. He wanted a real celebration, and I said fine, let's do it right. We booked the best restaurant on the coast, the one with the velvet banquettes and a piano that knows all the standards by heart. I added flowers, deep tea roses the color of coral at dawn because a rose queen doesn't show up without a crown. We chose a menu: oysters on crushed ice, tiny lamb chops like commas, a citrus tart that looked like August sunlight trapped in butter, a jazz trio, a karaoke hour, customized cocktails named Leo Rising. I prepaid everything. I wanted him to feel like he belonged to a family that shows up. On the morning of the party, I called to make sure everyone had the address, and to giggle with my daughter-in-law, Tessa, about whether the karaoke list should include the embarrassing 90s hits I love. Tessa answered on the second ring, breathless. Simone, hi, busy day. I won't keep you, sugar. Just confirming the cake arrives at 7, and Leo likes the lemon more than chocolate now, so she cut me off with a laugh she uses like perfume. Mom, listen. This is a party for young people. Please don't come. Old people have no place here. She said it so quickly I thought she'd bitten her tongue on the way down from the sentence. I waited for the correction. The kidding, Mom. See you at 7. Nothing came. My ear filled with the clink of ice and someone calling her name in the background. Old people. No place here. The words sat in my chest like a swallowed diamond. Small, hard, impossible to pass. I am not a woman who begs for a chair at a table I bought. So I hung up, drew a neat breath, and dialed the florist. Cancel the coral garden, I said. Send the driver back, then the restaurant. Yes, the entire deposit. No, I don't need a credit, put it back on the card. Then the jazz trio. Gentlemen, consider the evening yours. No hard feelings. Tell your bass I loved his mingus last time. The bakery. Hold the tart. Bake it for yourselves and call it equity. The karaoke company. Baby, I adore you, but not enough to pay you to mick people who insult me. The specialty bar. No lemon ginger Leo Rising tonight. Let it set. The manager at the restaurant tried to talk me out of it with all the charm in the world. I thanked him for his time and told him one day I'd return for dinner with someone who knew where his bread was buttered and by whom. By noon, my phone began to ring like a bad omen. First my son, Evan. Mom, what did you do? You embarrassed Leo. I canceled my own gifts, I said. Consider it an elderly person remembering her place. Don't be dramatic. Baby, I taught drama to drama. I hung up. Then Leo, sweet Leo, whose voice I'd once heard crack with tears over scraped knees and girl trouble. Grandma, what the hell? Tessa says you're making her cry. I'm thrilled she can still feel things, I said. Happy birthday, darling. Don't spend my money on a room I can't enter. He started to bluster. I let him. When you're 20, thunder sounds like wisdom. When you're 72, you can smell the rain. I poured myself jasmine green tea, my favorite. The kettle hissed like a stage whisper. By 2, the voicemails had shifted tone. My son again. Colder. If you think you can manipulate us like this, think again. Tessa, old people who don't know when to step aside end up very lonely. And then Leo. Wow, you ruined my birthday. Like, thanks. Ah, the poetry of youth. The refunds started smooshing back into my account like little seals flopping onto a beach. The bank app chimed, bright and relentless. Each credit posted felt like a coin clicked back into a machine I owned. $10,000, more or less, returned to me like a boomerang. I stared at the number and thought of a sentence from my grandmother. A woman is never too old to reroute the river. I opened my laptop and booked myself a suite at the best oceanfront hotel I could find within driving distance, the one I'd lived 5 minutes from my whole adult life and never, not once, allowed myself to enjoy because work and family and polite. Oceanfront, corner terrace, private plunge pool, spa package, of course. The premium breakfast they only serve people who read the words la carte without flinching. I ordered a car to pick me up. I arranged for someone to water my roses. I took a long bath and laughed out loud when I realized I could stay underwater as long as I pleased because no one needed me to cut their lasagna, to drive their husband, to pick up a dry cleaning emergency. I put on a silk dress the color of storm clouds and a hat with a brim wide enough to shade a decade of mistakes. I packed a scarlet one-piece swimsuit, a real one with structure. Life's too short to pretend elastic is a personality. On my way out the door, I paused at the mirror, touched the place by my eyes where the fine lines make me look like I've been smiling too much, which, frankly, I have not lately. Old people have no place here, I told my reflection. Good thing I travel. The hotel lobby smelled like citrus and money. Check-in is always a theater. I gave a performance. The concierge recognized my name. My roses supply the hotel's boutique and upgraded me to a suite with a balcony so grand it deserved a monologue. I walked out and looked at the ocean, which breathed in, breathed out, and never once asked me to justify my existence. "Hail, Queen," I murmured. My phone buzzed. 32 new notifications. My daughter, Claire, who lives across town and has made neutral into a sport, had texted, "Mom, maybe you should apologize. Tessa is very upset." I responded with a selfie, me on the balcony, wind in my hair, the sea behind me like a sapphire secret. I added a caption, apologizing to the horizon. I posted the photo to Instagram. Yes, I have one. Yes, I use it. No, I don't filter. First night of a well-earned holiday, I wrote, "Old soul, young heart, excellent room service." Within minutes, hearts bloomed. My friends from the Garden Society cheered in the comments. A few of my boutique buyers sent seaside restaurant recommendations. A woman I met once in line for coffee messaged, "You look 10 years younger." I wrote back, "I feel 50 years freer." Room service delivered dinner so beautiful it felt rude to eat it. Scallops like pearls on edible silk, a salad that traveled directly from a farm to my plate without experiencing a single indignity. I ate barefoot, toes curled against cool tile. I put jazz on the speaker and let Miles Davis untie the knots in my back. Voicemail again, because drama travels in packs. Evan, lower now. Mom, you can't just blow up people's plans without consequences. Tessa, shrill enough to cut glass. We will not forget this. Claire, trying to be Switzerland, call me. I didn't. Instead, I called the spa and added a 90-minute massage to my morning. I lay in bed and watched the moon walk silver across the water and remembered the night my husband proposed in a garden perfumed by roses so heady they could have raised the dead. He's been gone 2 years. In those 2 years, I've been polite through my grief like it was a potluck and I'd brought the wrong casserole. That night, alone and happy, I slept like I owned the tide. Morning broke with a gull crying the way truth does, loud, irritating, unavoidable. I walked the beach before the world woke, the hem of my white linen pants dampening, the ocean touching my ankles the way a dog noses your hand to say, "I'm here, I'm still yours." I bought a ridiculous sun hat from the hotel boutique, tried it on in the mirror, decided it made me look like the sort of woman whose mistakes come with excellent anecdotes. At breakfast, papaya, Greek yogurt, coffee strong enough to qualify as a legal stimulant. I scrolled past a photo my daughter-in-law had posted from the youth-only party. 20-somethings ringed by rented blossoms I didn't pay for. Leo in a paper crown, Tessa's arm looped through Evan's like she'd won a prize at the fair. The caption read, "Sometimes family is who shows up." I laughed so hard I had to put down my fork. By noon, my bank texted, "All refunds settled." $10,000 plus the petulant fee the restaurant had tried to keep, and I'd politely pried back with the promise of a formal complaint. I transferred every penny into my Spoil Simone fund, a cheerful little bucket I'd never allowed to exist. My accountant would faint. I would fan him with $100 bill and tell him to breathe. At the pool, under an umbrella the size of a circus tent, I ordered a cocktail that arrived dressed in mint and gossip. A young man cannonballed into the far end of the water, came up laughing, shook the hair out of his eyes like a dog who knows he's charming. He was 30-something, the age of my son, but none of his nonsense. He glanced my way, noticed my book, and called across the pool, "Is that the new Patchett? Any good?" "It's excellent," I said, "but the protagonist has far too much patience with men." He grinned and swam over. "Then she's not you." "Not yet," I said, and turned a page. We chatted the easy way strangers do when the sun is flattering and the drinks are a little too honest. He introduced himself Michael, visiting from Chicago, here on business that looked suspiciously like pleasure. I introduced myself Simone, here on pleasure that looked suspiciously like policy. He asked about my roses. I asked about his tattoo. He told me about a mother who did the best she could with what she had. I told him about a son who did the least he could with what I gave. He winced, sympathetic without prying. Points awarded. By late afternoon, my shoulders were warm and my phone was heavy with the weight of modern life. Another voicemail, the kind you don't even need to hear because you know the tone of it. Righteous, threadbare, a little scared. I let it sit. I had a massage appointment with a woman named Pilar who looked like she could fold steel into swans. She did things to my traps that made me briefly believe in reincarnation. I floated back to my room like a satisfied ghost. The sunset was indecently beautiful, a striptease of color. I ordered room service again because self-love, and because I didn't feel like making small talk with couples who'd mistake me for someone ready to forgive. I poured a glass of Sancerre and tapped my voicemails, finally, like flicking mosquito bites instead of scratching. "Evan, Mom, call me. This is getting out of hand. Tessa, we're discussing consequences. Adults handle their mistakes like adults. Claire, I think you hurt Leo's feelings. Maybe a note?" Leo, sounding unsure for the first time. "I didn't know, Grandma. It was weird without you." I closed my eyes at that, a small mercy in a hard day. Then a number I didn't recognize, local, crisp. I pressed play. "This is a courtesy call regarding the listing at 1120 Harbor Lane," a bright real estate voice chirped. "We received your inquiry. Yes, the seller seems very motivated. Asking price is $2 million. A steal on the bluff, $2 million. My house is worth $4 million. I didn't move for a full 4 seconds. Then I opened my eyes and the room snapped into high definition. The Sancerre tasted like ice water. I put the glass down very carefully and pulled up a browser. The internet, bless it, curse it, makes thieves lazy. I typed the address of my estate, the place where my roses climb and the Pacific throws salt in your hair, and there it was on 3 different sites. Estate sale price to move. Photographs of my living room, my view, my greenhouse where the old world roses live like queens in exile. Under contact seller, a number I recognized. My son's. I called Evan immediately. It rang. "Voicemail, Tessa," I said when she picked up, sugar leaching out of my voice like rain through chalk. "Take my house off the internet." "Oh, bright and brittle. You saw that. It's just exploratory." "Exploratory is for toddlers and NASA," I said. "You do not have authorization." "Actually," she replied, and I could hear the smirk forming. "Evan has power of attorney." I laughed, and it was not a nice sound. "No, dear, he doesn't." "Well," she said, nails clicking against something. "He does now." I ended the call before my temper did something undignified. Outside, the sea kept breathing, unaware that anyone might try to sell it. My phone buzzed again as if it were alive, a text from an unknown number with a photo of a document, my name hovering over a signature that looked like a drunk spider skated across ink. Power of attorney. The screen blurred for just a second. Rage can be a lens you have to wipe clean. When it cleared, I smiled. I have learned this much in 72 years. When people tell you that you don't belong, what they mean is, "We are afraid of your entrance." I finished my wine. I put on my lipstick. I took a photo on the balcony, silver hair, city lights, the ocean yawning open behind me, and posted it with a caption that made my friends cackle and my enemies read twice. "Vacation for the young at heart." Some of you don't belong here. 3 minutes later, 2 words from Evan, call me. 3 words from Tessa, consider it done. And a final voicemail, the one that pulled the drawstring tight around the evening. A measured male voice saying, Mrs. Duper, this is Attorney Lowell. Your son presented a notarized power of attorney. He intends to execute a sale tomorrow morning. If you wish to contest, well, the message cut off when my phone found low battery. I stared at the black screen and saw my reflection, crown of hair, eyes like flint, mouth curved into something that looked very much like a plan. Young at heart, my foot. I am young at war. I plugged the phone in, packed my bag in under 5 minutes, and called the front desk for a car at dawn. On the vanity, the hotel had left a mint with a note, sweet dreams. No, I told it gently, not tonight. At 5:30 the next morning, the car rolled under the port cock ray. I set my hat on my head, my purse on my shoulder, and the Rose Queen in the driver's seat of my bones. As the valet opened the door, a shadow detached itself from a lobby chair and stood Michael, with the easy grin and the tattoo like a compass. Headed back to the real world? He asked softly. Headed to teach it a lesson, I said, stepping into the car. My phone vibrated with a final text as we pulled into the pink of morning. From an unknown number, a photo of a conference room laid out with contracts. The caption read, "See you at 10. Oh, sweetheart, I thought, smiling as the coast unfurled beside me like a ribbon I was about to yank. You will. I have never been a morning person, but outrage is better than espresso. The car ate up the coast highway while pelicans skimmed the water like punctuation marks. I opened the window and let the salt slap me awake. Michael texted before the sun cleared the palms. Michael, you disappeared. Trouble? Me. Family fire drill. My house is on the internet at half price. Michael, that's not a drill. Want a witness? Me, want a co-conspirator. I'll share my location. A blue dot became a promise between us. I don't give people the keys to my day, but some faces you trust the way you trust the ocean to return, not because it loves you, but because it's ruled by larger laws. I went straight to my home, then stopped short at the sight of a "for private viewing" sign in my hedge, trimmed like a French noun. The gate keypad wore a new lock I hadn't approved. My gardener, Raul, stood inside the fence, shoulders tense like a violin string. Ciora, he said, "Lo, your son told me you'd moved to assisted living." Did he? I smiled a smile with no teeth. If you ever see me in assisted living, Raul, it'll be because I'm running it, he exhaled. He'd kept the roses watered while the listing hyenas prowled. The greenhouse looked untouched, the old tea roses opening their mouths to the morning like gossiping ants. I palmed Raul a cash tip, told him to keep the gates chained from the inside, and drove to the address Attorney Lowell's text implied, a nondescript office building where dreams go to be photocopied. The receptionist wore a blouse the color of optimism and a face that said she'd chosen it in good faith. "I'm here to see Mr. Lowell," I told her. "I believe he scheduled a sale of my life." She glanced at her screen. "Oh, you must be Simone," I said, full stop. There's power in refusing last names. She led me to a bland conference room laid out with contracts the thickness of doorstops. 2 men in suits pretended to stand when I entered. One held himself like he'd always wanted a mustache and had to make do with a fountain pen. The other wore a smile borrowed from a brochure. "Mrs. Duper," penman began, and I held up a hand. "You may call me Miss Duper," I said, "or you may call me Queen Simone and explain why my home is priced like a garage sale." He blinked. The brochure smile tightened. "We acted on your son's instructions. He has power of attorney." "And I have eyes," I replied, "which tell me that signature looks like someone slipped a ferret a Sharpie." They attempted their chorus of legal harmonies, words like standard, expedite, liquidity event. I listened with the patient face I reserve for toddlers, explaining why the cat agreed to be shaved. "Fellas," I said finally, "let's not pretend an elephant is a chaise lounge. If you try to close a sale on my house without me consenting while compos mentis, you'll be eating lawsuits for breakfast until your grandchildren go gluten-free." Of course, the brochure said. We'd never proceed without appropriate notarization. "Speaking of," I said, "where's the notary who stamped that fevered dream of a power of attorney?" Penman flicked his eyes toward the door. Running late, he lied. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Please, Mom, come to the office, sign the package, then we'll have lunch and talk like adults. The address she gave matched the room I was sitting in. And then, we're only thinking of your safety. Ah yes, the word safety, when used by family, too often means silence. The receptionist returned, soft-footed, carrying a tray. Tea? Your daughter-in-law said Jasmine is your favorite. I looked at the delicate cups and the polite steam and the closed door behind her, and I thought about Tessa, who has never once brought me anything without a string tied to it, maybe silk, maybe rope. I have survived long enough to earn my paranoia. Thank you, I said warmly, and did not touch the tea. The men picked up their cups. So did the receptionist, because good girls learn to sip from the same poison. I'll wait for my lawyer, I said. About that, Penman replied. Mr. Cartwright is unreachable. Mr. Cartwright is always reachable, unless he smells a dumpster fire and decides to protect his eyebrows. I texted him anyway. Emergency. They're attempting to sell my house. Blue bubble. Nothing. My phone vibrated again. Michael, I'm in the lobby. You okay? Me, better with reinforcements. A minute later, the door opened and there he was, scrubbed and steady in a linen shirt and the kind of clean sneakers that say I run toward trouble but not on your carpet. The men looked at him the way lawyers look at any element not accounted for in the settlement, warily. And you are? The brochure asked. Michael Klein, he said, handing over a card. It had a digital firm's name on it and 3 lines of small print that meant he touched money for a living, and it obeyed. I'm here as Miss Dupré's friend and informal advisor. Please continue if you believe transparency is the best look. Penman blanched just enough to be satisfying. Michael took a chair next to me and leaned close. I called a buddy in Cook County who calls a buddy out here, he murmured. That power of attorney? The notary number on the stamp belongs to a woman who retired in 2019. She teaches watercolor now. Bless retirement, I whispered. And watercolor. We began like civilized people pretending to be in the same play. Evan arrived first, hair combed into obedience, suit he'd probably bought with my Amex points. He hugged me, sort of. Tessa ghosted in after him, apologizing to the heir for being late, carrying a tote that looked like it had eaten 3 other handbags and still wanted dessert. My heart did its stupid thing at the sight of my son, the wanting to tuck his shirt and his soul back into decency. I ignored it. Mothers who confuse nostalgia for evidence end up writing checks to wolves. Mom, Evan said, taking the chair opposite mine, let's be practical. The market's cooling. You don't need that much house, and we can't keep worrying about your my what. I asked lightly. My independence? My tendency to spend my money on my life? He pushed on. We've drafted a fair sales agreement. We'll put the money into a trust. You'll be comfortable. Your care will be covered. Ah, I said. Once again, the word care doing the work of the word control. Tessa interlaced her fingers atop the table, nails the color of pink ambition. No one is trying to control you. We're trying to prevent mishaps. Michael made a small noise like a laugh walking itself back down the stairs. Then you'll have no objection, he said pleasantly, to my recording this meeting for Miss Dupré's records. He set his phone on the table. The red light bloomed. The men in suits shifted in their chairs. They tried to begin the paperwork. Page after page slid toward me like gray fish. I read precisely nothing. I was counting the tricks, not the cards. Out of the corner of my eye, the receptionist hovered with the tea, then set a fresh cup at my elbow. Jasmine, she said, with the face of someone following instructions to the letter. I sighed and lifted it. Let the steam wash my nose. Jasmine opens like a memory sweet at first, then interesting. I took the smallest sip I could manage without creating a scene. It was slightly off, a bitterness beneath the floral, like a compliment with a complaint folded inside. I set it down and reached for the water instead. Minutes passed. The room thrummed. Evan spoke, then the lawyers, then Michael, then Tessa. Words spun like silk and tried to stick to me. And then let me be frank, the edges of the table blurred a fraction. Not much. A watercolor wash. My pulse pricked my wrists in 3 languages. That's the thing about being drugged when you are 72 and have taken enough meds to recognize an uninvited one. The body notices the stranger in the room first. I locked my jaw around a smile. I need the restroom, I said cleanly, standing before anyone could arrange my limbs for me. The corridor outside the conference room looked like all corridors. More doors to more rooms where people agree to the worst ideas because the chairs are comfortable. The restroom mirror threw me a face I recognized, furious, focused, and adjusting. I ran cold water over my wrists and thought, they really brought me Jasmine to the slaughter. I texted Michael beneath the paper towel. Me, do not drink. They spiked the tea. Michael, got it. How bad are you? Me, like a second martini on an empty stomach. Miss Duper, the receptionist's voice crooned through the door. Everything okay? Perfect. I chirped back. Tell them to hold their horses and their hubris. When I returned, the documents had been very helpfully placed in a neat stack with a pen parked on top like a miniature dagger. Tessa had switched to her calm face, which she believes is persuasive on everyone not named Simone. Evan's mouth had folded itself into concern. Mom, he began, you're being unreasonable. We're trying to help. Sign the transfer and we can all go on with our day. Go on where? I asked. You to the bank, me to the beige apartment where mothers go to be stored? Penman slid one sheet from the stack as if it were a scarf pulled from a magician's fist. This is the acceptance of sale at 2 million. Initial here, here, and here. Then the escrow amendment. The room tilted a whisper. I placed my palm flat on the table. Michael watched me the way a good dancer watches a partner lose a beat, ready to catch, but not to lead. Your power of attorney is forged, I said softly. Your sedatives are clumsy. Your timing is poor. And your underestimation of me will be the last fun you have today. Evan flushed, ugly. Mom, stop calling me that like it grants you access. For a second, we all breathed the same air and knew the same thing, that a line had been drawn, and I had the chalk. Then something in my head fuzzed, just a little. Penman reached out, the pen a spear, and tapped the signature line. Right here, Miss Duper. I picked up the pen, feeling its weight, and trailed the tip over the paper not on the line, but just above it, a lover's tease. My hand shook not fear, not age, not drug. Adrenaline wearing high heels. I made one small mark, a curling S that could have become my name if I'd let it. Then I stood so fast my chair barked against the wall. I took the contract in both hands and tore it cleanly in half. The sound was exquisite righteousness ripping fabric. Paper snowed onto the table like confetti at a divorce. Call the police, I said to the paralegal standing by the copier, a young woman with eyes like a deer that has realized the forest is on fire. Right now, I am here against my will. I was tricked, and I was given something to drink. The paralegal looked to her bosses. They looked to their shoes. Michael was on his feet, between me and the suits, his voice cool as an ice bucket. You will not touch her, he said. You will not detain her. And if you claim she signed anything, I will summon discovery so thorough your kindergarten art will be in evidence. Tessa hissed through her teeth. Simone, stop this. You're making a scene. Oh, honey, I said, and bared my teeth. I am the scene. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 with the speed of a woman who has practiced emergencies. I'm at the law offices of Lowell and Park, I told the operator. I'm Simone Dupré. My children attempted to sell my home with a forged power of attorney and offered me a drink that is making me dizzy. I need an officer and a paramedic. And I need you to stay on the line while I explain that I am safe, capable, and constant, and I do not consent to anything but help. The operator's voice arrived like a ladder. Help is on the way, she said. Are you in immediate danger? Only of signing something stupid, I replied. But I've stopped that. Evan lunged for the ripped paper. Michael stepped in. The brochure smile finally cracked. The paralegal, bless her good backbone, picked up the office phone and dialed as I'd told her. I saw her lips form the words against her will. I sent a silent rose to her future. Tessa tried one last angle, syrup turning to vinegar. Think about Leo, she said. He needs stability. Then you should have invited the person who paid for it to his party, I said. Instead, you invited consequences. Sirens began to write their music outside, faint but coming closer. I turned to the not-quite notary stamp sitting smugly on the table and slid it into my purse. Evidence likes company. Miss Duper, please, pen man said, voice finally stripped of its varnish. Let's be reasonable. Reason, I told him, was cancelled with the karaoke. The door burst open. 2 officers entered, one young, one fed up, followed by a paramedic with a face you'd trust with your secrets. The young officer looked around and started to aim his "everyone calm down" speech at the person with the gray hair and the lipstick. Then he saw Michael's recording phone, the ripped contract, the paralegal's white knuckles on the handset, and the way I stood without trembling. "Ma'am," he said to me, respectful, "are you Simone Dupré?" "I am," I said. "And I need you to do 3 things. Take my statement, take possession of this fraudulent document stamp, and take a good look at the people who think mothers make easy prey." The paramedic guided me to a chair. I let her cuff the blood pressure monitor to my arm. The world drifted back into crispness, like a radio station tuning clean. The officer asked questions. I answered in sentences that could be entered into evidence. Outside the window, through the frosted stripe, a familiar profile passed by the high brow, the careful bun. Claire, my daughter, had come early to watch me fold. She had misjudged the laundry. "Officer," I added, "please note that my eldest daughter is down the hall. She is either an accomplice or a witness. Either way, she will have opinions." As he stepped out to get her, I glanced at Michael. He looked at me the way men look at sunsets and women look at receipts, with appreciation and calculation. My phone buzzed. A new message slid into place, from an unknown number again, with an attachment. It was a photo of my greenhouse door, propped open. A caption, "Clock's ticking. Buyer's tour at noon." I felt the old engine of me catch, purr, and roar. I thought of my roses, the ladies who'd carried me through widowhood, who'd perfumed my loneliness until it smelled like adventure. The sirens shut off. The cop returned with Claire, who had the pallor of someone who finally sees the cost of her neutrality. "Mom," she said, and I watched the word fall out of her mouth, smaller than it used to be. "Hello, Claire," I replied. "Would you like to sit down and help me ruin a forgery?" Her mouth opened, closed. Somewhere deep in my bag, my gardener's gate remote pressed against my wallet like a secret handshake. The paramedic peeled the cuff from my arm and nodded. "You've got something in your system," she said quietly. "But you're steady now." "Story of my life," I said, and stood. Outside, a clock chimed the half-hour. Noon approached like a dare. I looked at Michael, at the officers, at my daughter, at the men in suits who were starting to understand that their day had sprouted thorns. "Gentlemen," I said, smoothing my skirt as if we were leaving a matinee and not a crime scene, "we're done here. I have a house to defend, a garden to lock, and a parade to rain on." And I walked for the door, my heels neat on the cheap carpet, the taste of jasmine in my mouth like a promise I'd never make again. You know that sound when a rose stem snaps clean, decisive, and strangely satisfying. That's how it felt walking out of that office, leaving behind the little paper empire my children had tried to build out of lies. It wasn't the end of the war, just the sound of the first petal falling. Michael followed half a step behind me, not crowding, but close enough that I could feel the quiet confidence rolling off him like good cologne. The officers escorted us to my car, though by then I was steadier on my feet than either of them expected. "Ma'am, we'll open an investigation," one said. "Your son and daughter-in-law may be subject to charges if the documents are proven forged." "Maybe," I repeated with a smile that could curdle milk. "Oh, sweetheart, will be. Mothers who raise thieves don't sit quietly while they steal the silver." The young one looked like he wanted to apologize on behalf of his entire gender. I patted his arm. "Don't worry, officer. I won't let them ruin your afternoon. But if you happen to drive by Harbor Lane around noon, you might see a fascinating open house." He frowned, unsure. "Ma'am, I believe my son's about to attempt trespassing, wire fraud, and stupidity, all before lunch. Should be a record." Michael chuckled under his breath. "You're terrifying," he murmured. "Good," I said, opening the car door. "It's the only language men like Evan understand. By the time we reached my estate, the for sale signs had multiplied like weeds. Two men in khakis were already at the gate with clipboards, pointing at the view and chatting in that awful tone real estate agents get when they can smell commission. Raul, bless his steadfast heart, was blocking the entrance with his pickup truck. "Signora Simone," he called when he saw me. They tried to break the lock. I stepped out of the car like a queen arriving at her own coronation. The agents froze one still mid-sentence, his smile glued on. "Gentlemen," I said sweetly, "if you value your licenses, you'll remove your signs before I plant them somewhere the sun doesn't reach." "Mrs. Duper, Miss Duper," I corrected. "And before you dig your hole deeper, allow me to educate you. You are standing on private property belonging solely to me. Any sale is fraudulent. Any attempt to enter is a crime. And if you'd like to confirm, the local police department has a file number for you." Michael stepped up beside me, pulling out his phone. "Want me to email them the case reference?" "Oh, I'd love that," I said. "Add a copy to the state licensing board while you're at it." "You've never seen two men move so fast." They stammered apologies, gathered their things, and reversed down the drive like they were fleeing a ghost. Raul grinned from ear to ear. "Signora," he said, "you should run for president." "Too much paperwork," I said. "But I might buy a new crown." Inside, the house felt like it was holding its breath. The air smelled faintly of roses and salt and betrayal. My husband's portrait over the mantel seemed to smirk. He always enjoyed my theatrical moments. I walked straight to my study, opened the safe behind the bookcase, and checked the contents. Deeds, stock certificates, the original will all intact. Thank heaven for the part of me that's always been slightly paranoid. I tucked everything into a leather portfolio and locked it to my wrist with one of those slim travel cuffs I'd bought decades ago and never thought I'd use. Michael watched, impressed. "You're more prepared than most CEOs I work with." "Darling, I was a CEO," I said. "My late husband may have run the meetings, but I ran the money." He gave me that grin again, the one that makes you forget what decade it is. "And now, I said, "I'm going to remind them who taught them the meaning of profit." At exactly noon, a silver SUV rolled up the drive. Out stepped Evan, looking less like a son and more like a man walking into his own firing squad. Tessa was with him, sunglasses big enough to hide her conscience. Behind them, a carload of would-be buyers waited expectantly. I stood at the top of the steps with Michael at my side and Raul behind me, arms crossed. "Mom," Evan started, holding up a folder as if it were a shield. "Let's be reasonable. We've come too far to make this ugly." "Oh, sweetheart," I said, "I've been reasonable for 72 years. Today I'm magnificent." He tried to speak again, but I held up a hand. "You forged my signature. You drugged my tea. You lied to a lawyer and a notary. Do you know what that's called?" He swallowed. "A misunderstanding, a felony," Michael interjected, voice calm and deadly. "Several, in fact." Tessa tried a different tactic, stepping forward with her tragic eyes. "Simone, please, you're confused. You don't want all this stress." "Darling," I said, tilting my head, "I've been insulted by better women than you and came out smelling like jasmine. Don't mistake serenity for confusion." Behind them, one of the buyers, a nervous-looking woman in yoga pants, whispered to her husband, "I think we should go." "Smart woman." "Police are on their way," I announced. "You can wait and explain your creative paperwork, or you can leave and hope your lawyer knows CPR." Evan's jaw tightened. He glanced at Michael, probably calculating whether he could intimidate him. He couldn't. My young companion looked like the kind of man who could win an argument just by adjusting his sleeves. "This isn't over," Evan said. "Oh, it's not even begun," I replied. "But it will end with me pruning you out of my life." They drove off in a flurry of gravel and self-righteousness. I exhaled and finally laughed, the deep, belly kind that feels like rebellion. Michael turned to me. "You really tore them apart." "No, dear," I said. "I just trimmed the dead wood. Now it's time to burn the clippings." That night, over a bottle of wine on the terrace, the sky melted into violet. My phone buzzed non-stop calls from my daughters, from Evan's lawyer, from numbers I didn't recognize. I silenced them all. "Are you going to sue them?" Michael asked. Eventually. First, I'm going to make an example out of them. He raised a brow. How? By living better than they ever imagined I could. And because the universe adores symbolism, my phone pinged again, this time with a message from the hotel I'd left in such a hurry. Your reservation remains open for the week. Would you like to return? I smiled at Michael. You know what? I think I need to finish that vacation, but with company this time. He leaned back, grin easy. You inviting me? I don't invite. I command. Pack light. 2 days later, we were back at the coast, checking into the same suite. I half expected the staff to ask questions about my abrupt departure, but apparently, a tip and a good smile erase mysteries faster than bleach. Michael set our luggage down and looked out at the sea. You really did it. Most people would be crying in their lawyers' offices right now. Most people, I said, pouring champagne, haven't had to raise 3 children and bury a husband while keeping a multi-million-dollar business alive. I don't break. I pivot. We toasted. Outside, the waves kept their slow applause. Tell me about your roses, he said after a while. I laughed softly. My roses? They're the only creatures in my life that know how to grow without betrayal. He smiled. And they made you rich. They made me free, I corrected. But yes, they paid for every insult I've ever tolerated. He studied me, the way young men sometimes look at older women when they finally realize we are not relics but archives full of maps they've never seen. You know, he said, you could expand that company again, modernize it, go national. I could, I said slowly, the idea taking root. I already have the brand, the suppliers, the patents. My son's been running it into mediocrity for years. Then take it back. I looked at him, at the horizon, at the endless possibility curling out of the sea. And for the first time since my husband's funeral, I felt something close to hunger. I will, I said. I damn well will. Later, as we sat by the pool, I scrolled through my messages. One from Evan stood out. You'll regret this. We'll sell the house one way or another. I typed back, try me. Then, for good measure, I added, and while you're at it, check your business license. Because here's the thing he didn't yet know. The business he thought he owned, the one I'd transferred after his father's death, was still legally under my control. I'd kept a clause, tucked deep in the founding paperwork, stating that ownership reverted to me upon any act of misconduct by the successor. Forgery certainly qualified. Michael saw the gleam in my eyes. You've got an idea. Oh, darling, I said, stretching out on the lounge chair. I've got a plan. The sun slipped lower, turning the water gold. Somewhere, far away, my son was realizing that the empire he'd tried to steal was built on foundations he didn't own. And I, Simone Dupré, the Rose Queen herself, was just getting started. It's funny how quickly power shifts once you remember it's yours. 1 week, you're being told you don't belong at a birthday dinner. The next, you're replanting the garden with thorns sharper than any insult your children could imagine. By the time Michael and I returned from the coast, I'd already drafted a list titled Project Resurrection, Rose Queen Returns. The first line read, reclaim my company. The second, make Evan wish he'd never learned to hold a pen. I may be 72, but I still type like I'm fighting a war, and in a way, I was. The company my husband and I built, Duper Botanicals, started in a shed behind this very house. I had dirt under my fingernails and a baby on my hip. We began with Rose's hybrid teas with names like Morning Kiss and Eternal Grace, and somehow, we ended up supplying florists from La to Boston. When my husband died, Evan stepped in to help. He'd been charming, persuasive, and utterly unqualified. I gave him a generous salary and a limited mandate, assuming love would inspire integrity. Ah, the optimism of mothers. Within a year, he'd turned the company into a glorified middleman operation, selling our roses to bulk distributors who stripped them of their names and resold them as generic. He'd gutted the soul out of it. But legally, he never owned it. The trust his father left contained a clause most people would have skimmed over. In the event of any breach of fiduciary duty or ethical conduct by the successor, full control shall revert to the founder. Guess who drafted that clause? Yours truly. I called my lawyer, not the snake who'd partnered with my children. Cartwright picked up this time, voice dripping contrition. Miss Duper, he began. I was unaware of the full circumstances. Don't bother apologizing, Herbert. I interrupted. Just tell me how fast I can invoke Clause 9 of the Duper Trust. He cleared his throat. Well, given the evidence of attempted fraud, very fast indeed. You'd only need to file notice with the state registrar and present the forged documents as proof. Perfect, I said. Prepare the paperwork. I'll sign it in person. I hung up before he could start groveling. That evening, I met Michael in the garden. He'd traded his city sneakers for old boots and was helping Raw replant a row of climbing roses. I stood there for a while, watching him 30 years younger, sleeves rolled up, forearms dusted with soil. He was whistling, terribly off-key, and it made me laugh. Do you always help women dig up their pasts? I called. He looked up, grinning. Only when their pasts grow thorns. Well, I said, handing him a trowel. Mine has an entire arsenal. We worked in companionable silence until the sun melted into pink. The scent of roses thickened around us. That sweet, almost sinful perfume that makes you believe in second chances. Simone, he said after a while, what will you do once you take the company back? Oh, that's the best part, I said. I'm going to modernize it. Online sales, sustainable packaging, a rebrand that puts my name front and center again. No more hiding behind anyone's son. Just the Rose Queen. He smiled. You really are unstoppable, darling, I said, brushing dirt off my hands. Unstoppable is just what you call a woman who's finally tired of waiting for permission. The next morning, I arrived at Duper Botanicals headquarters unannounced. The receptionist, some young thing with a headset and a bored expression, blinked when she saw me. Oh, Miss Duper, I corrected. Is my son in? Ah, he's in a meeting, cancel it. Her mouth opened to protest, but something in my tone must have reminded her of nuns and thunderstorms. She picked up the phone. Moments later, Evan appeared, face tight, Tessa hovering behind him like a shadow with lipstick. Mom, he said, trying for control, you can't just walk in here. I can, I said, and I did. He crossed his arms. If this is about the house, it's about everything. Sit down. I walked past him into the boardroom and took the chair at the head of the table, the one that had belonged to my husband. It fit like muscle memory. Effective immediately, I said, pulling out a folder. Your management authority is suspended. I've invoked Clause 9 of the Duper Trust. You'll find it notarized, filed, and legally binding as of 1 hour ago. He blinked. You can't do that. I already did. Tess's voice went sharp. You can't run this company alone. You'll destroy everything. Oh, sweetheart, I said with a smile. I built this from a backyard shed. I can run it in my sleep, but don't worry, I won't destroy it. I'll just prune away what doesn't bloom. Evan snatched the papers from my hand, scanned them, and his face drained of color. He knew it was over. You forged, careful, I warned. You might accidentally describe yourself. He threw the papers down and stormed out, slamming the door so hard a vase trembled. Tessa lingered, her mouth working like she wanted to spit venom but couldn't find enough of it. You'll regret this, she said finally. No, I said, rising. You will. I've let people take my kindness for weakness for too long. Consider this my retirement hobby, collecting apologies and overdue assets. She left. I sank back into the chair, and for the first time in years, the office felt like it belonged to me again. Within a week, I'd rehired half the old staff, the ones who'd left because they couldn't stomach Evan's arrogance. They came back like homing pigeons, and the place began to hum again. I replaced the sterile gray walls with photographs of roses, my roses, in every shade of rebellion. I commissioned a new logo, a single rose in full bloom, surrounded by thorns shaped like a crown. Michael helped me set up an Instagram for the company, Rosie Queen Official. Naturally, and within days, we had thousands of followers. People loved the story of the 72-year-old entrepreneur reclaiming her empire. The press caught on. I did a few interviews, one for a morning show where the host called me the fiercest grandmother in America. I corrected her gently. Not fierce, dear. Focused. Evan's calls went unanswered. His lawyer tried too, but I let Cartwright handle it with relish. The more they fought, the more evidence surfaced about their fraud. Apparently, that fake power of attorney had been notarized with a stamp registered to a deceased notary. Oh, poetic justice, thy timing is impeccable. One evening, after the dust of the day had settled, Michael and I sat on the terrace overlooking the sea. I poured us wine. He poured me compliments. "Do you ever stop?" he asked, laughing. "Only when I'm being kissed," I said, eyes glinting. He blinked, startled, then grinned. "Is that an invitation or a challenge?" "Oh, darling," I said, leaning in, "it's both." He kissed me, and for a moment the years peeled away like the layers of an old bloom revealing its center tender, defiant, alive. When we finally came up for air, I said, "Don't fall in love with me, Michael. I'm an expensive habit." He laughed softly. "I'll start saving." The next morning, while I was luxuriating in bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Mom, you're trending on TikTok. The kids are calling you the Rose Queen of Revenge." I snorted. About time they recognized royalty. Michael looked over from the balcony. "You're famous again, darling," I said, stretching like a cat. I never stopped being famous. People just forgot where to send the fan mail. But beneath the laughter, I felt a quiet triumph blooming inside me. I had my house, my company, my roses, and my dignity. For decades, I'd been the dependable one, the mother who smoothed over drama, who signed checks and swallowed hurt. But not anymore. The Rose Queen had returned to her throne. And I wasn't done yet. There's a particular kind of silence that comes after victory, an almost sacred quiet, heavy with the perfume of something freshly earned. I woke up to that silence. The air in my house was still, the sea was calm, and the phone, for once, wasn't screaming for my attention. For the first time in months, I didn't wake to threats, voicemails, or fake concern. Just the low hum of my espresso machine and the whisper of waves against the bluff. And then, because peace never lasts long in my world, a soft knock at the door. I opened it to find Claire, my eldest, my careful one, my diplomat in pearls. She'd always been the bridge between me and the chaos her brother created. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. She held a paper bag and the smell of fresh croissants wafted out like an apology with butter. "Truce breakfast?" she asked. I stepped aside. "If it's a truce, I'll need champagne with those." She followed me to the kitchen, setting the bag down. "Mom, before you start," I said, "if you're here to defend your brother, remember that he tried to sell my house while drugging me with jasmine tea." She winced. "I know. I told him it was insane." "Insane," I echoed, pouring mimosas. Such a useful word when one doesn't want to say criminal. "Mom, Claire." We locked eyes across the marble counter. And then, the tension cracked, just a hair. She sighed. "You're trending again, you know." "So I've heard," I said, sipping. "Apparently being wronged by your children is excellent PR." "Leo showed me your interview," she continued. "He cried a little." I arched a brow. "Tears won't pay the bills." "I think he misses you." That softened me. The boy had been swept into this by the tide of his parents' arrogance. He'd made mistakes, but he wasn't cruel, just young. "Good," I said finally. "He should." "I miss him too." Claire hesitated. "Mom, the family's in chaos. Dad's old friends are calling. Tessa's ranting on Facebook. Evan's threatening lawsuits he can't afford. Let him." I interrupted. "The more noise he makes, the guiltier he sounds." She gave a short laugh. "You really don't pull punches, do you, sweetheart? At 72, the only thing I pull is rank." We ate in silence for a moment, just the clink of forks and the ocean in the distance. Then she said quietly, "I'm proud of you." I froze, croissant halfway to my mouth. "Excuse me?" She smiled. "I mean it. You didn't let them walk over you. You reminded us all who you are." I felt something in my chest loosen, a small, stubborn knot I hadn't realized I was still carrying. "Took you long enough," I said, pretending not to get misty-eyed. "I was scared of you, Mom," she admitted softly. "Even when I was little, you were always so sure of yourself. So big. I didn't know how to love someone who never needed anything." I took her hand. "Oh, Claire, The trick was I always needed something. I just never wanted to burden anyone with it. She squeezed back. Then let me help now. I smiled. Maybe. If you promise not to call it help. I prefer collaboration. That afternoon, she drove me to the company office, where I'd scheduled a press conference. Word had spread that the Rose Queen was reclaiming her throne, and the media were practically frothing. I'd chosen my outfit carefully: cream trousers, silk blouse, coral scarf the same shade as the roses Tessa had canceled for Leo's birthday, a crown of subtle defiance. Michael met us there, already speaking with reporters. He looked at home in the chaos, fielding questions with the ease of a man who's never feared an audience. When he saw me, his whole face softened. "Ready to make history, Your Majesty?" he murmured as he handed me the microphone. "I already have," I whispered back. The cameras rolled. I looked out at the sea of faces, curious, skeptical, hungry, and let my voice cut through the chatter like a garden shears through weeds. "I was told not long ago that old people have no place in certain rooms," I began, "that we should fade quietly while the young carry on without us. But I'm here to tell you, age is not absence. It's experience with better lighting." Laughter rippled through the crowd. I continued, steady and sure. "I built this company with my hands and my heart, and I refuse to let anyone, family or otherwise, steal what generations of women before me fought to grow. Today, I'm taking back what's mine, not out of vengeance, but out of principle, because mothers don't raise children to betray them, and roses don't bloom for thieves." The applause came like a wave, full and warm. Cameras flashed. I caught sight of Claire in the back, wiping a tear discreetly, and Michael beaming like a proud accomplice. When it ended, a young journalist asked, "Miss Dupré, what would you say to women who've been betrayed by their own families?" I looked straight into the lens. "Darling, don't burn bridges. Take them back, pave them with gold, and charge a toll." That evening, the story went viral. "The Rose Queen Strikes Back," screamed one headline. Another called me the Grand Dame of Justice. A podcast dubbed me America's favorite revenge grandma. Michael read them aloud, grinning. "They love you." "They should," I said. "I'm very lovable when I'm terrifying." He laughed, poured champagne, and we toasted under the stars. "I have to ask," he said after a while, "what will you do if Evan tries to come back? Beg forgiveness?" I swirled the champagne. "Forgiveness isn't free. It has a price, and in this case, the price is humility and the return of every dollar he stole." He nodded, then looked at me with something softer. "And if I asked for something?" I smiled, meeting his eyes. "Depends on what you're asking for." He leaned closer. "A chance." "Oh, Michael," I said with a slow grin. "You've already had one. You just used it well." The following week, I invited Leo to lunch. No fanfare, no photographers, just us. He showed up looking sheepish, taller than I remembered, but with that same earnestness I'd always adored. "Grandma," he said before sitting down, "I'm sorry. I didn't know what they were doing. I thought you'd canceled the party because you were mad." "I was," I said honestly, "but not at you. You just inherited bad manners from your mother." He laughed nervously. "I was a jerk too. I said some things I didn't mean." "You were 20, I said, shrugging. "Idiocy is practically a graduation requirement." We talked for hours about his classes, his friends, the new girl he liked. He showed me photos, and I pretended not to notice how much he looked like his grandfather when he smiled. When the bill came, he tried to pay. I stopped him. "Not this time," I said. "But I do want something from you." "Anything," he said. "Respect," I said simply. "Not flowers, not visits, just respect. Learn from this. When someone gives you love freely, don't let others poison it." He nodded, eyes bright. "I promise." I reached across the table and patted his hand. "Good boy. Now eat your dessert before I change my mind and make you wash dishes." He grinned, and just like that, a small piece of my heart healed. That night, I sat on my balcony, watching the waves roll against the shore. Michael came out behind me, wrapping a light shawl around my shoulders. "Your kingdom's thriving," he said. "Your roses are in every boutique from here to New York. Your stories inspired half the country, And the other half, they're jealous. I laughed. Good. A woman's got to keep them guessing. Below us, the pool glowed turquoise under the moonlight. My phone buzzed again, a message from Evan this time. Just 3 words. I'm sorry, Mom. I stared at it for a long moment, then turned the screen off. Will you answer him? Michael asked quietly. Eventually, I said, but not tonight. Because forgiveness, like roses, needs pruning before it blooms. Morning arrived soft and gold, the kind of California sunrise that makes the ocean look like it's forgiving you for everything. I brewed my coffee, fed the cat, and stared out at the endless blue. Peace at last. Well, my kind of peace. I'd won the battles that mattered. My name was mine again. My home was safe. My company blooming. My dignity intact. And yet, a rose queen never stops tending her garden. There's always another weed to pull. That weed, in this case, was my son's unfinished business. Evan hadn't stopped trying to salvage what remained of his pride. He'd hired a new lawyer, young, aggressive, overconfident, and filed an injunction claiming emotional distress caused by my public statements. The audacity! My statements? The man drugged his mother and forged her signature, and he was distressed. I told Cartwright, file a countersuit so sharp it draws blood. He chuckled. You really don't play nice, do you? Nice, I said, is for church picnics. This is war with lace gloves. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had passed through me and turned into focus. It's a glorious feeling when you've been wounded, and instead of bleeding, you bloom. 3 days later, my revenge was delivered in the sweetest form possible, an invitation. I called Michael into my study, where I was sitting at the desk I'd reclaimed from my late husband's office. We're hosting an event, I told him. He raised an eyebrow. Another press conference? Better, I said. A gala, he grinned. You throwing a party after they uninvited you from one? That's poetic. Oh, not just any party, I said, handing him the invitation mock-up. Read it. It read, The Rose Queen's Celebration, an evening for the young at heart. Michael smirked. Young at heart, huh? I sipped my tea, Jasmine, this time unpoisoned. Exactly. The same phrase Tessa used when she told me old people had no place at my grandson's birthday. I intend to return the favor. You're inviting them? Of course, I said. Front row seats. Wouldn't want them to miss the show. The evening of the gala. My estate shimmered like a dream. Lanterns hung from the rose trellises, the pool sparkled under floating petals, and a string quartet tuned up under the pergola. The scent of hundreds of roses mingled with champagne and sea air. I wore a gown the color of sunrise and a diamond bracelet I'd pawned, repurchased, and then improved. My hair was up, my lipstick was defiance red, and my heels said don't test me. Guests arrived, editors, designers, journalists, investors. Michael worked the room like a proud co-host, though he stayed close enough to refill my glass whenever I needed it. The music swelled, laughter rippled, and for a moment, the garden felt like something out of one of my dreams, the kind where you're finally dancing with no one to tell you to sit down. Then came the late arrivals. Evan and Tessa. She wore white, of course she did, the audacity of innocence. He looked rumpled, brittle, and badly rehearsed. They hesitated at the gate until I gestured toward the open archway. Come in, I called. After all, this party's for the young at heart. You don't belong here, but you may watch. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The journalists were already raising their cameras. Tessa's smile faltered, the kind that hides panic under gloss. Evan looked like a man who just realized the gallows were decorative until they weren't. They approached cautiously. Mom, he began, we didn't come here to fight. Good, I said lightly. You're unarmed. Tessa tried her best sweet tone. We wanted to apologize. Oh, I tilted my head. Then by all means perform it. Everyone loves a redemption story. Her eyes darted to the audience, then back to me. Maybe privately? I laughed. Darling, you chose to humiliate me publicly. Fair's fair. Evan's voice cracked. We made a mistake, okay? We were desperate. No, I said softly. You were greedy. There's a difference. Silence fell. Even the quartet stopped playing. I let the pause stretch. Timing is everything, whether in gardening or revenge. Finally, I smiled. I'll accept your apology on one condition. You'll sign over the remaining 10% of company stock you hold, and you'll do it tonight, in front of witnesses. Then you'll leave my home and my name forever. Tessa gasped. You can't. I can, I said, and I already have the paperwork. Michael handed her the folder, his expression calm but cold. I could feel the murmurs rippling again, guests realizing they weren't just attending a gala, but a reckoning. Evan's hand trembled as he flipped through the pages. He looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw the boy I'd raised, the boy who used to bring me seashells and say they were treasure. I wanted to hate him. I couldn't. You really won't forgive us? He whispered. Forgiveness isn't the same as reunion, I said quietly. I can forgive you and still walk away. In fact, that's what I'm doing. He signed. Slowly, defeatedly. Tessa hissed, you'll regret this when we're gone. I never regret weeding, I said, taking the papers. The crowd applauded. Some discreetly, some boldly. I raised my glass. To family, I said. The ones we're born with and the ones we choose when the others forget how to love. Evan and Tessa slipped out before dessert, their absence leaving the air sweeter. The music returned, the night breathed again, and the sea beyond the cliffs glittered like approval. An hour later, I sat by the pool, my shoes kicked off, my hair falling loose in the breeze. Michael joined me with 2 flutes of champagne. You're a dangerous woman, Simone Dupré, he said. Correction, I said, clinking my glass against his. I'm a free woman, he smiled. And we watched the guests dancing on the terrace, their laughter echoing off the water. What happens now? He asked. Now, I said. I live. I travel. I plant new roses. Maybe write a book. The Art of Blooming After Betrayal. Has a nice ring, don't you think? Bestseller for sure, he said. We fell into an easy silence. The kind that only comes when the war's been won and all that's left is to enjoy the spoils. I leaned back, eyes half closed, letting the cool night air kiss my face. Down by the gate, I caught sight of figures: Evan, Tessa, and Claire. They weren't coming in, just standing there watching. I raised my glass in a lazy salute. Claire smiled faintly. Evan looked small, like a shadow that had lost its shape. Tessa turned away first. Michael followed my gaze. You think they'll ever really understand what you did? Maybe, I said. When they're old enough to be betrayed by someone they love, he nodded. That's dark. Realistic, I corrected. Roses need both sun and thorns to grow. The music changed, something slow, romantic. He stood and offered me his hand. Dance with me, queen. I laughed. You'll have to keep up. He did. We danced barefoot by the pool under strings of lights and the indifferent stars. My reflection in the water smiled back at me, older. Yes, but unbroken, alive, dangerous in all the best ways. When the song ended, I kissed him softly. You know, I whispered, this is the part where the story usually fades to black. He smiled against my cheek. Then let's make sure it fades into gold instead. And that's exactly what we did. 2 souls. One much older but none the weaker, sitting by the water while the world finally learned what I'd known all along. You can cut a rose. You can even try to sell the garden. But you can't kill the roots of a woman who remembers who she is. I am Simone Dupré, the Rose Queen. And no one, not blood nor betrayal, will ever take my bloom again.